Hey guys, welcome back to another comic review, and this time around, I'm not going to be alone doing this book. But before I go any further, this is another book sent to me by my friend Chris. Chris, thank you once again for Justice League versus Godzilla versus Kong, the crossover no one thought would happen. But I'm not, like I said, I'm not here alone on this review. I am here with my good friend, a man who knows a thing or two about giant monsters, a great author, basically my Obi-Wan Kenobi in terms of writing, Matt Dennion.
Hey everybody, it's a pleasure to be here today. Tyler, thank you for that wonderful intro. We're very good friends. I appreciate you reaching out to me about this. I know you just mentioned we talked about when this was first brought up doing this comic, and I couldn't be happier than to review it for your fans with you.
Yeah, literally a year, basically almost a year ago. It is in the same month it got announced, so I'm counting it as 1 year. There was a lot of buzz at the start of San Diego Comic-Con about a big Justice League Monsterverse crossover. And I remember, you and I were and everyone else in our chat room were it's probably not real, it looks fakey. And then the leak turned out to be real, and I ran to you Charlie who just got a golden ticket. I'm like, dude, it's real. And we did that video I called you and everything. I didn't even give you preface. I was just I have to tell him.
Yeah, which is great. It made me excited to know that this was in fact real. It wasn't just some fan-made thing, because it is the type of thing we've often discussed as fans. What if Godzilla, Kong usually Godzilla, so throwing in Kong was even extra cool in my book, to do something with the Justice League or Marvel or some such thing. So I was thrilled that it was coming out. I read it issue by issue, which is fun, but it's tough. Sometimes you have to wait a month or more in between. But overall, I really enjoyed the comic. A few things I'd like to see more of, which we can go over when we get to the spoiler part of the review. But how would you like to start? Just talk about overall our general feelings about it from there, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea. The comic itself is like a fever dream, but it's something you think would have happened, right? The more you think about it, and we've talked about before, DC and Godzilla were going to cross over at some point with the success of the Monsterverse, and with them trying to hype up James Gunn's DC universe. It was a matter of time, but we all thought it'd be IDW.
Yes. I think going to Legendary was a good move in this case, because it got us Kong too, which played a large role in this. It also gave it more of a Monsterverse feel, I think, to the comic, where IDW kind of has more of a serious, Heisei, maybe some Millennium type feel. But I think for this comic, a Monsterverse kind of a tone works, because the Monsterverse at this point is almost like a large superhero movie anyway, right? Like GSK. Yeah. And as long as you have a fun story, it doesn't, to fit everybody's palate, have to be super coherent. This one's, you can follow it through pretty good. It's nothing super thought-invoking, but it's really, really fun, I thought. So I think in that case, this iteration worked out better.
Yeah. I do have some misgivings about the book, but on a whole, I did like it. I think it's a fun book. It's one of those shut your brain off. It's very much like a summer action movie.
Yes.
And I think you are right that going with the Monsterverse was the smart idea. And it was probably the idea they were going to go with from the get-go, because it would have been, it was much easier.
Correct. Yeah, it's all kind of in-house for them. They already have the deal with Legendary to distribute their movies. So it made sense in that respect. And then I know you and I had talked about a lot of things that we were seeing this happen. It's not the most popular character, but it'd be cool if we got this interaction. And they picked up on a lot of what we were putting out there. I'm not saying they heard us specifically and trying to take credit for it. I'm just saying I was glad whoever put it, the writers were in that same mindset that we were what would be some fun things to see in this, characters from DC to interact with the monsters, right?
Yeah, we were literally 90% right on that book in that video.
Yes, yeah. If you could go back and rewatch it now from the future, we hit a lot of points that some we thought were stretches, but they came true, which I was thrilled to see.
Absolutely. So, I guess let's talk about the big thing in the room: Godzilla versus Superman. We can cross that fight off the list.
Yes, a dream fight for a lot of fans. I liked the way that We got it in the tease in issue 1. I'm not going to go spoiler yet. The battle in issue 2 was fun, and how they brought it back around, and how I do think this comic did do a good job of Superman in particular, capturing some of the aspects of what makes him Superman.
Yeah, I really like that too.
Right. Yeah, so the Godzilla Superman fight, a huge thing. I mean, it's been debated across the fandom for years. Something we've wanted to see. It's right up there with getting an official Superman Goku or Godzilla Gamera. You know, this would probably be like the 1A of those two things. And we got it. It was pretty well executed. They captured, I think, the motivations of these iterations of the characters pretty well. You know, can nitpick a few things about it for sure. I'm not trying, I know I'm saying a lot of positive things. This comic wasn't, 100% on everything I'd like to see, but for the most part, like I said, it was fun, and I was pretty happy with the stuff we got. I loved the Godzilla Superman battle almost right off the bat. What did you think?
I thought it was really good. Opening with that was a smart idea rather than, drag it out.
Correct.
I also like, and in minor spoilers, when Godzilla and Superman meet each other again, it's not like a rematch. It's actually like Superman's like, it's a very Superman thing where it's like, you don't belong here. I'm sorry I attacked you. I'm gonna get you home.
Yes, no, I thought it was fantastic. He specifically says, I'm not here for a rematch because it's not a Superman thing to do. He's not out to prove he's stronger than somebody else. He's out to save as many people and right as many wrongs as he can. And in this case, that's what the situation required. So he did the Superman thing to do. Yeah.
I also like that there's some very human moments here, like when, because basically this is not the DC universe we know. This is like almost like a Super Friends cartoon.
Yes, that's probably a good way to put it.
Where Clark and Lois aren't married in this universe, and basically he's getting ready to marry Lois, and that's when Bruce is like, doesn't show up as Batman like you'd think. He shows up just in regular clothing, just to be like, hey man, just wanted to say hi. I don't know why, I just like that human moment between Bruce and Clark where, and you'd think like Bruce would show up in all decked out in Batman gear. No, he just shows up as Bruce Wayne.
Now I love it when they focus on the friendship between Clark and Bruce, not necessarily the teamwork that is Superman and Batman, but the fact that Clark and Bruce are genuinely friends. And they make comments of Clark says, listen, I don't need you to buy me something I'm never going to be able to pay back for an engagement ring. He's like, I want to do it myself. And, Bruce basically says, like, I have reservations about you being vulnerable through Lois. However, I want you to be happy basically as my friend. So please go be happy. I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what he said. Yeah.
I also like that, like, Godzilla beats Superman. Like, can we talk about that real fast?
Yeah, we can. So it was, the setup was good. They were fighting each other. Godzilla definitely got the win for all the people who are on the one side of that. They gave Superman a bit of an out in that Shazam makes a mistake and turns back into Billy in the middle of the fight, and Superman has to shield Billy and take like a full-on blast from Godzilla. But it was pretty ballsy. DC is not often known for putting Superman in a spot where he loses, right? Like even in Death of Superman, it's kind of like a tie.
Yeah. No, it's a definitive win.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, he was being helped by Hawkgirl and Shazam. It wasn't like, Godzilla was being handicapped. No, he was fine.
No, it was a definitive win on Godzilla's part in this case. And DC okayed it, which shows how much faith they have in Godzilla at this point, how popular he is. So it was cool. Yeah, definite knockout blow. Darn near killed Superman, actually.
Yeah. The other thing is, too, is that DC really hyped this up. Like, they were excited to do this. Like, there was so much... I had never seen so much love and, like, hype for a crossover since the DC Marvel books.
Right. We got tons of variant covers. We got trailers on YouTube, which I know they don't do those a ton for comics. So that was really cool. Though DC was definitely behind this, definitely pushing it. I think it has to do with the popularity, obviously, of the MonsterVerse at this point. DC trying to relaunch and rebrand with their movies and getting, hopefully some good traction there. But I think that's where most of that comes in. What is your thoughts on those?
I personally think it was a smart idea because, again, like GXK was coming out, GVK had done banger numbers, and they were basically like, it was under the same roof, so I think Warner Brothers and Legendary were like, hey, build this up. You got to talk about it.
Yes. Yeah. And they knew that. We started talking about some of the key points they had, like the Superman Godzilla fight, so we can. I think there was a smart ways to help build things up too.
Yeah, I think that fight, it was done very well. I think also when we bring in the other Titans, they all kind of play to each other's strengths. Like, one thing we really guessed was Camazotz showing up and battling Batman, the Bat Family. That happened.
That happened. It was great. We definitely talked about if Camazotz showed up in Gotham or in the Batcave and took on the Bat Family, and we got the whole Bat Family plus like the extended Gotham universe as well. So, Batman, Nightwing, Robin, Red Hood, Batgirl, Batwoman, then Black Canary shows up. You know, like all of the characters you could conceivably see being in Gotham showed up. And it took on this giant bat character, which is just really cool. Yeah.
I really like that, but then I'm like, they forget about they just lock him up, and I'm like, where the fuck did you put him?
Yes, yeah. That is one of the points of the story where it was like, well, what happened with this? So they do wrap up Camazotz. I assume at the end he's transported back to, you know, the MonsterVerse universe, but where was he in between? Right.
Yeah, and that's another thing is that I don't know
he's
where in the
Batcave,
yeah,
and some cell in there.
So this obviously isn't our DC universe, but where in the MonsterVerse is this?
It's also not canon to the MonsterVerse specifically. It's,
yeah.
I've seen a few indicating that it's like a parallel universe to the MonsterVerse, because if you try to tie it into a specific spot, it becomes very difficult. You know, it seems Godzilla and Kong sort of know each other in this comic, but it's not like they seem to be, I don't say friends, but allies, like the words in of GVK. But the fact that Tiamat's in it, who we know is dead after
and Skilla
XK, is a giveaway. You know.
See, that I knew is that it was set before GXK. That since Skilla and Tiamat were big in the comics,
right.
And the thing is that okay, this got to take place for GVK, but Skull Island isn't like a mess. Like, it isn't like absorbed by the storm. It looks fine. Godzilla looks very much like 2014 Godzilla. And it's just like, and again, I knew this was set before GXK because again, these comics were coming out before those events, so
right.
That didn't bother me. And like seeing Skilla and Tiamat here, I was like, oh, I know what's gonna happen to you two. It ain't gonna be pretty. But let's actually talk about that title real fast. Justice League versus Godzilla versus Kong. That's kind of a lie.
Yeah, it's not a three-way encounter. Like, you would think that it was leading to something where you had I thought from the title we'd have basically a continuation of Godzilla versus Kong, but then additionally the Justice League would be trying to mitigate the damage the two had caused.
Yeah.
So that wasn't necessarily the case in this.
Yeah, and that Kong is barely in here.
No, he's not. So for a lot of people who want a more Godzilla-centric story, this is definitely one of them. Kong is used more sparingly, but I think interestingly in the parts where he's at. Godzilla kind of does a Final Wars type of world tour across the DC universe, so we get to see him interact with different heroes in different settings, which I really enjoyed. Yeah,
I really do think that the initial idea was to have just Godzilla and Kong, but I think the idea grew that the other monsters from the MonsterVerse were going to show up. It is fascinating to see that only a small number of them showed up, and one of them from the comics. And again, Camazotz is still alive, so this is before Kingdom Kong.
Right.
And the other thing is we have only Tiamat, Behemoth, Skilla, and Camazotz, Kong, and Godzilla, and I was kind of hoping to see Rodan, or I don't know if they had to ask again for Rodan, or
yeah, I would assume that they had to ask again for the rights for the other Toho monsters. I do not know if that includes Mechagodzilla, who obviously shows up in the series as well.
Yeah. But yeah, I was that. I was kind of hoping for Rodan or the Muto Queen, or Methuselah.
Yeah, seeing some other ones would have been cool. I kind of get it, like how much, I don't say screen time, but page space can you give up for each thing. There were already some story plots that were kind of left, like you said, the cameos one a little bit hanging, so I guess that's probably why too much more wasn't introduced.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I could have used some more. However, on the flip side, I was happy to see some lesser-known DC characters that I wanted to see appear in the story, make it in, and have interesting roles. Like, I know when it was first announced, you and I had both mentioned, like, you know what would be really cool in this? Atom Smasher. And what do we get as soon as Superman goes down? Godzilla versus Atom Smasher.
Yeah. And we even get Titano.
And yeah, we got a Titano appearance. I know you and I had talked about, you know what would be cool is like Aquaman controls a lot of kaiju himself. Would Aquaman call in a kaiju to, you know, if Godzilla came to Atlantis, and, you know, what do we get? Godzilla comes to Atlantis with Tiamat, and we get, that was like a three-way dance then. You get Aquaman unleashing the Kraken, which they make a joke about, and, you know, that battle outside of Atlantis was, I thought, really fun to see too.
Yeah. Talking about this, switching to the Legion of Doom, it's very much like the Super Friends cartoon, that lineup.
Very much so. You had your Gorilla Grodd, which we got to at least some interaction with Kong, which was interesting. Luthor being the head of it and the boss. Giganta, Black Manta was in it, right? So all of those type of characters. There's a few other different ones sprinkled in, like Deathstroke, for instance, who didn't have a huge role but did make an appearance. Toyman playing a key role in it, who was, you know, well known from his Super Friends. I think that's probably where I first came across Toyman actually as a kid.
Yeah. So I like that. I will say that Brian Buccellato, who has done DC work and he has been writing for the MonsterVerse, he does have some weird wording. Sometimes, like when Black Manta's like getting the Legion together, he's like, "This will be your time to take out all the Nemesis superheroes," and I'm like, "You could have just said Nemesis or just superheroes. You didn't have to say both."
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that. Definitely see that.
And then there's like some stuff that just made me cringe, like Penguin going, "Let's squawk and go," or
yeah.
Or like Luthor saying facts, and I was like, okay, stop, Brian, stop.
It was a weird juxtaposition too. You had those kind of like corny jokes, but at the same time, like Atom Smasher and Guy Gardner are violently killed.
That's another thing. Let's talk about that real quick. Toyman, Atom Smasher, Guy Gardner. A lot of characters get killed in this book, and it's treated like, oh, that sucks. But we, like, the only one that really matters are everyone's like
Godzilla. And it's not like super clear at first, like, is he knocked out until you get the next issue? Like, oh, he's dead. Guy Gardner's a no doubt about it is killed when it happens to him.
Yeah, and speaking as Guy Gardner's my favorite Green Lantern, I was like, well, fuck you too, book.
Yeah, and they do kind of like crap on him a little bit too after the fact. Like, he was an acquired taste, a very acquired taste.
I'm like, wow, thanks guys. And yeah, the other thing that bothered me with this book is that you had 7 issues. 7 issues, and that ending is so fucking rushed.
Yes, I will say, so the ending is both simultaneous for me, a high point and a low point, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Because I loved some of the things that we got. I loved the Batmech we knew was coming. To see that squaring off with Mechagodzilla was really fun. The Green Lantern Megazord. So to back up before Guy Gardner dies, the freaking 5 Green Lanterns make a Megazord out of a Green Lantern contract, which I thought was like the type of thing that to this day I just want as a toy. As a kid, I would have gone nuts for it. Today, I just wanted to put on my shelf. Can I say that? So,
yeah.
Then seeing things like I did like Kong being kind of smitten with Supergirl because it's a typical, like, Kong sees a pretty blonde and he's, you know, taken automatically. Grodd controlling Kong through Supergirl was kind of interesting. The final fight scenes were pretty well done. Like, I enjoyed the fight scenes.
Oh, yeah.
I enjoyed those. I enjoyed seeing Beast Boy become Kong was pretty cool, too. To both, like, briefly scrap with him and then team up with him.
Yeah.
So all of those things were good.
Now,
sorry,
I will...
Go ahead. If you want to talk about things you liked about Glass, then we'll get to the disappointing part of it, I guess.
Yeah, I will say the one thing that, like, I feel like was unnecessary was the Ra's al Ghul subplot of bringing in a giant skull crawler.
Yeah, that's where I was going to get to. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, dude. I was just like, that bothered me for reading the book. I was like, this feels so like an unnecessary, tacked-on thing. If you just wanted to use Skullcrawlers, just have Skullcrawlers. And it wasn't even like he brought back Ramarok, the big Skullcrawler from the end of Kong Skull Island. It was just a big, generic Skullcrawler.
Right, and it was like strangely mutated from its skull being dipped into the Lazarus Pit, which I don't think we've seen that really occur before in DC history. We see people come out like and be disturbed from the Lazarus Pit, but not like have massive physical changes occur to them. I thought at first it was going to be because it was all spiked up and everything combined with Doomsday, which like would have made a lot of sense, but never came to fruition.
Yeah.
And then they also never explained Raj's kind of angle. Like, it didn't seem like he was working with Lex. Was he working against him or just sort of with him?
Yeah.
And then what was his end game? I know he wants to like end human life, so I imagine the invasion of skull crawlers would do that and taking out the heroes makes sense, but they could have like explained what it was for sure.
And the other thing is too, like, Raish is only seen for one panel, like, he has no dialogue, no nothing. Like, I was like, this feels so forced in, and I could tell like the writer, even like Buccellato was probably like, oh crap, I put too much in this.
Yeah, I think so too. I agree with that, especially too with you're kind of trying to figure out what happened to Toyman, and I thought, and I think you did too, thought they were setting up for a sequel. And spoiler, he just got crushed under Godzilla's foot and kind of stuck in there.
Yeah, he's literally like that one guy who got that T-Rex kill from Lost World where the guy gets stepped on and just dragged under the foot. It's like that.
Yeah.
How demeaning.
I also feel like it's the type of thing that Deathstroke and Cheetah would have noticed pretty quickly.
Yeah, the two greatest trackers in the DC universe, and they couldn't tell for like. And the other thing, and I know this is a side tangent, but like, they've been battling the Titans for 10 days, and it takes the monsters have been traveling to Metropolis in that time. I'm like, it really feels like they showed up and then they left. I'm like, how much time? What? Like the time? Like they said 10 days, and I'm like, it took them 10 days to get Metropolis when they first left.
Yeah. So it definitely did feel a little rushed in certain spots.
Yeah.
I hope that a previous comic where we saw that occur manages to be a template for how to rectify those in future situations. I'll get to in a minute. I know you have talked about it a lot. But real quick, it was super over the top in the end, and it was brief. I loved getting Kong as a Green Lantern, though.
Yeah, that was really fun. They even hyped that up, too.
Yes, yeah, with like the art being released and stuff, it's like, oh, it kind of makes sense, you know, with somebody with willpower, which like Kong has a ton of willpower, he'll fight till he's about to die. Especially the MonsterVerse Kong is very heroic, you know, especially after like a GXK, you know, where he's freeing all those apes and stuff. He would seem to be the type of creature that a ring would go to. I know it seems a little goofy, but Mogo is a freaking planet. He's a Green Lantern, right?
Yeah.
So,
like Mogo is a planet. That's always my argument whenever like someone's like, that doesn't make sense for a Green Lantern. Mogo is a planet. Also,
Mogo is a planet.
we have a Green Lantern who is a sentient bacteria and a fucking fly as a Green Lantern. There's even a Green Lantern, and surprise, it was created by Grant Morrison, who is a sentient volcano.
Right. So Kong is not the craziest thing we've seen as a Green Lantern, and it was just fun. Again, it was one of those things that was just fun. As you had mentioned, again, I love Superman coming back to save the day without having to refight Godzilla. I did think Godzilla's introduction and Superman's into the final battle was kind of quick. You know, I was hoping to see a bit more, which again, I feel like a Doomsday Skullcrawler would have called for them to really have to team up and fight. But that's where it went to. I know I have a question for you. I was trying to think about why the end was so rushed. I think it's a double-edged sword. Part of it being, like you said, these kind of are like, I don't know what to do with some of these plot points. I'm running out of time. The second one is, it sold incredibly well. So we were both thinking sequel. But then I was starting to think, like, well, what would they do in a sequel? Like, if they went to the MonsterVerse Earth, like, what could we see that we didn't see in the first one?
I think, like, to bring in Scar King. Like,
I do think Scar King and potentially Shimo would be interesting. Yeah,
like bring back, because they didn't kill Grodd. At least I hope not. He got shot with a .50 cal by Red Hood, and no one called out on him for that. But you know, I didn't see a body, so he ain't dead. And they didn't say Grodd's dead. But Yeah, have Grodd go back. Like, my idea is that Grodd was like disillusioned, and he's like, Kong wasn't the ape god that I wanted, so he goes back to through like maybe the cosmic treadmill or like a boom tube or something, and he goes to the Monsterverse, goes to Hollow Earth, and seeks out like the true ape god, and he finds the Scar King.
That could be very cool, especially if I'd love to see, again, he did use some less known characters like Solivar teaming up with Kong. Would be pretty cool to see.
Yeah,
like heroic people. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I'm sorry to interrupt. You go ahead.
No, that's all I had. Is that like characters like that? I just don't know how far you can carry it in a story, though.
Yeah, the one thing, like, the thing is like, I would like to see if they do a sequel, and you mentioned this too, is that the Justice League the DC universe should be in the Monsterverse Earth.
Yes, I would rather see that. See more Monarch characters in this situation, which would be cool because we finally are starting to get a few reoccurring Monarch characters that I think are going to be around a little bit. Geo obviously would be an interesting one to have in there. I do think if they were bringing another Toho monster, Mothra would fit well. I know we talked about, like, I'd really like to see Mothra meeting Wonder Woman would be like an interesting team up, right? Like two basically goddesses.
Yeah.
But are also kick butt warriors. I just imagine Wonder Woman riding on top of Mothra. Like, how awesome would that be?
Oh, totally.
So that would be really cool. Now, you and I bounced this around before. I mentioned that there were some loose ends that I thought were rushed through or not tied up properly. And what came to mind for me, based even just rewatching one of your recent reviews, was the Batman Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series. The first comic I enjoyed quite a bit. I felt like there was one or two loose ends, and in particular, I didn't care for. That was the opposite for me with the ending, where like they kind of did multiple panels to show the Batman Shredder fight, and I was like, oh, I really want to see them go at it. I did feel like a lot of stuff that was left hanging, they went back and readdressed in the animated movie, though, which I freaking love, where you got like a kick-ass battle between Batman and Shredder. You've got like a bunch of other fun stuff that we didn't necessarily get in the comic or touched on. There's got to be at least talks about doing Justice League versus Godzilla versus Kong as an Elseworlds animated movie at this point, based on the success of the Monsterverse, the success of this comic, and I would think hopefully building up goodwill for DC going forward with their new projects.
I totally believe that is the case, and considering that the Monsterverse, and you can't argue this really, the Monsterverse is stronger than the DC universe. Not in like power set, I mean economically.
Yes, no question.
The Monsterverse has literally made more money than the entire previous DCU. Like, yeah, it's they kind of like, if they want to do if DC wants to do another one, it would be like, yeah, Monsterverse is going to be mentioned more.
Yeah, I would agree. And I definitely think, even if DC themselves doesn't want to do it, Legendary has been doing some animated stuff. They did the Skull Island one, which I thought was okay. I really liked the end of it. I thought the last few episodes were good. And aren't they doing the Tomb Raider? Isn't that Legendary too? So they have the capabilities at least to do animation.
Yeah. I would say that they would probably do this as like a DVD or DVD Blu-ray release.
No, I agree. I don't think theatrical at all. I'm thinking straight to VOD, DVDs, everything. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think it's a strong possibility because, say what you want, the Ninja Turtle Batman crossover sold well movie-wise. I believe the Justice League Ruby movie sold decently. Not decently enough to make them want to keep Ruby.
No, another story.
But that's beside the story. But I think this would sell incredibly well because people love animated Godzilla projects, and it's been a while since we've had a Godzilla animated project here in the States.
Yeah, for sure, and I know they'd have to get Toho to agree to it, but they did several overseas. They did the Polygon trilogy. They did Singular Point. Godzilla appeared in the Shinkalion movie, so like I feel like having him cross over with the Justice League would be doable, and I'm assuming Legendary can already do it with Kong because of Skull Island, like without too much issue. Yeah,
I think that I think also Toho, because again, I think as much as like Toho gatekeepers, this is a direct message to you Toho gatekeepers out there. The Monsterverse is the reason we have Godzilla films. It's why we have -1 and Shin, you know?
Yes, for sure.
So, I think I think, honestly...
I love all of those iterations, and I do think if they were to do this comic, definitely helps, and if they were to do an animated film, it just opens up more doors for more Godzilla.
Yeah, and personally, I think Toho would be like, oh, you want to do an animated Godzilla film? Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, if I know Shinkelion was wildly popular in Japan, but if they're willing to do that, like, DC is a huge brand, right? Like, I can't imagine them not being on board for something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about games like Gigabash, which I love, is a small developer. They got it. I can't see them saying no if Warner Brothers can make a solid pitch. And based off the sales, they have, like, math behind it, based off sales of the comic.
Yeah. And again, they're working with Hasbro for Godzilla versus Power Rangers.
Yeah, and Godzilla's Power Rangers, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think it's a strong. I wouldn't say a matter of when. I think it's a strong. I'm going to invest a lot of strong possibility that this gets an animated film. I would be actually. I hope this gets announced at this year's Comic-Con.
That would be amazing.
Would you be shocked if it did get announced as an animated film this Comic-Con?
A little bit. I'd be thrilled. But at the same time, it would make sense to strike while the iron's hot. You know what I mean? Like, they're coming off the comic, it sold well. I don't think waiting a couple years is a good idea. If you can go on any kind of fan Facebook group or whatever, and you're seeing this topic come up that, you know, we want this as an animated film, any kind of YouTube review you check out, I mean, look at the comments, everything is, this needs to be an animated film, this needs to be an animated film. You know, even for the James Gunn haters out there, he's not an idiot. He pays attention to social media stuff. So I think he might look at this and be like, all right, how can we make this happen? Yeah.
I'll be more excited for it than that Watchmen animated films.
Well, that's a pretty low bar.
Oh, dude, did you that trailer? I was like all interested in a Watchmen animated movie, but then I see the animation and I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, I was like, is this What If? What am I watching here? This is,
Please tell me this is not the animation going forward for the animated films for DC.
I hope not.
I swear to God, they can, if they announce it and then reveal it's that What If animation. That I know it has a name, but like if it's the What If CGI animation they're using for Watchmen for a Godzilla vs. Justice League crossover movie, I will immediately go, no, I don't care. That animation is so stiff, so unlikable. It is garish to look at.
Yeah, that's a good word for it. I hope that wouldn't be the case. I think we have to wait till we see some actual footage from Creature Commandos. Will tell us what we're looking at, right? Like that I think will be the standard.
Yeah. All in all, though, I like this book. I do think it has some problems, but as a summer film, as like if you have the mindset of like a summer blockbuster type film, it's kind of like shut your brain off and just enjoy the monster fights.
No, totally. So I think it fits well in the MonsterVerse. It's very similar in style to something like GXK, where like you're not getting something that's super deep in thought, but hey, this is a lot of fun stuff I wanted to see that I'm getting to see. You know,
the thing I would have done differently is cut out the Ra's al Ghul Skullcrawler subplot. That was just nothing.
I agree with that. Yeah, and
either make an 8th issue to breathe out the space and make the fight scene the final fight a lot bigger and more chaotic, and just kind of showcase all the monsters and whatnot, or at the bare minimum make the 7th issue like a 48-page one, because that's what I thought they were doing. I thought they were making, when they delayed it for a few weeks, I was like, oh, they're making the ending bigger.
I agree. I thought the same thing. I did too. I thought that they were rehashing it and making it a little bigger. If you haven't read it, it is still pretty climactic battle, but from what they built up to, the Ra's al Ghul thing being the key one that you're like, what happened with this? It just seemed to kind of pop up and go nowhere. And I don't think it was all of that necessary. I think that they were trying to figure out a way to include Kong. I would have just done it. I love the idea of Green Arrow being on Skull Island. I would have had like half an issue or part of an issue dedicated to Green Arrow being woefully overmatched, trying to take on a Skullcrawler, and seeing him having to kind of duck and weave, and then Kong coming to his rescue, or Supergirl, and kind of then, using that to bring them into the story. You still do the whole Grodd thing without the Ra's al Ghul components. That makes sense?
Yeah.
You could still have those key parts in there. Again, had they combined the Skullcrawler with like a Doomsday or something and made the fight bigger, I think that would have really pushed it over the top. So after, they got our prognostications for the comic, if they do an animated film, make that slight change, guys. Let's do that. And have a little bit more Superman and Godzilla in the final battle.
Yeah, let me throw out this theory. Let me put on a tin hat theory real quick. I think the reason why they hyped up the Skullcrawler thing and it didn't go anywhere, because I feel like it was meant to be Ghidorah.
Yes, the head doesn't even look like Ghidorah's. It doesn't look so Skullcrawler when it first goes in there. So it's conceivable that it was going to be Ghidorah, and then maybe the rights fell through. Yeah, maybe like they were like Buccioletta was like, I want because you would like, speaking as a Ghidorah fan, I want to see like Ghidorah tear shit up across Metropolis and fight Superman, but probably it was like a rights thing, and then they were like, Buccioletta was like, oh shit, I gotta change Skullcrawler, big Skullcrawler. Right, that makes sense, and then to not have some kind of threat and just dump in a Elijah's pit, it comes back stronger, which we haven't seen before. But you are correct, it doesn't look like a Skullcrawler skull at first, as much as it does like maybe even a King Ghidorah skull. And additionally, it's like, when did we see in any monsterverse thing like a Skullcrawler just get kind of decapitated where the head was left there? Like even Ramarak, that didn't happen to him, right? Yeah, like he got his guts pulled out. Yeah. So, but now I can see that. I would say though, overall, like on a scale from a 1 to 10, I'm giving this a solid 7.5 in terms of being fun and seeing things I wanted to see. What do you think? I'm going to say, if I'm going to go by 1 to 5, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. Okay. That's fair. Yeah. I would recommend it though for people, right? Like a fun read, like you said, a fun, turn your brain off type of read. Yeah. It's not like, the other thing of why I think this doesn't follow a major DC continuity, so you don't have to like, who's that guy? It's like, as long as you have a bare knowledge of the DC characters, you're good. And also, if you like the MonsterVerse movies, aside from like Tiamat, like you've seen Scylla in King of the Monsters, but she didn't play a big role. Camazotz and Tiamat, they're here, and you don't need to really read their comics to know who they are. Like one of them's gonna both of them are gonna show up in a movie and get killed by Godzilla. It doesn't matter, and Camazotz gets wasted by Kong later on. So it don't, to quote Carl from Aqua Teen Hunger Force, it don't matter. None of this matters. But overall, though, I was thrilled. I know you and I have talked about this before. I hope this opens the door for more crossovers. Every time I can, I tag Legendary Comics with, you guys have the MonsterVerse. You have Pacific Rim. Come on. It's money waiting to be put into your hand for a comic book. I think that is going to be the next project. After how well this sold, I think they're going to be like, well, Pacific Rim does have like still a fan base that wasn't killed by Pacific Rim Uprising. People do want, like, there is a following for it and like an interest in that idea. So I think like they they might do that. I think that's another possibility for Legendary to be, at least at the bare minute, to do like an in-house crossover. Right. I could totally see that. And then for Godzilla in general, the new Ninja Turtles writer has already said he wants to do a Godzilla crossover. So yeah, Jason, let's come on now. Yeah, Jason Aaron is also like, I feel like Jason Aaron is a big enough writer to get what he wants. Yeah, and it'd be all in-house for him, right? Like, aside from the licensing stuff, but it'd be in with the characters they already have. That depends on like Toho and Paramount playing nice. I mean, if you can get Toho and Hasbro to work together, but Paramount's like probably a different beat. But I'm going to say maybe. I think that's been something IDW's been wanting to do, is Godzilla versus TMNT, because that's their two best-selling titles. That's basically what's keeping the lights on at the house. Yeah, I would imagine Paramount would do it. Any TMNT crossover sells like crazy, right? They sell solidly, at least. Yeah. I would even say like Godzilla and Star Trek, if only to see Godzilla fight the Borg. Which would be cool. Yeah, I mean, they definitely have ones that they can do. So hopefully that happens. I know you and I talked briefly about it too. I also hope that over at Dynamite, this opens up some doors for Kong crossovers, because I think that there is an untapped potential there too. Yeah. So I think off the top of my head, Jungle Girl would be a fantastic crossover for Kong. You could do one in the past with Red Sonja sort of like the futuristic Planet of the Apes one. I've been dying to see a story where the Shadow is trying to mitigate Kong's damage in New York during his rampage. I'd go with a more traditional Kong for that. Obviously, they're not using the MonsterVerse one, but there's a lot of fun stuff that could be done there too.
Yeah, I will also say that I still want to have like just a balls to the wall, insane Mars Attacks Kong.
It'd be fantastic on Skull Island, so you get like all the dinosaurs in the mix and stuff too, and the Islanders and stuff. That'd be great.
Well, I was thinking like my idea, and I did a video on it. I don't know if you saw it, but like they capture Kong and take him to Mars, and he's basically like, it's like Planet Hulk but with Kong.
Also a fantastic idea. I'm in for all those things. So I hopefully this opens those doors. But overall, I'm very happy we got this comic. Definitely some things they could have done better on, but I enjoyed it quite a bit. And I recommend it for people. At least it's a fun read. Yeah,
totally. I highly recommend it. Chris, I know you're watching, thank you once again. This was a book I was excited to read. While I still have I still have reservations about the book, I still liked it. Like, I still think it's a solid, like, fun read. As long as you, like, don't question shit and move on, you're good. So yeah. Matt, thank you so much for coming on. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah. So yeah, if you've read Justice League versus Godzilla versus Kong, God, that's such a title, is a mouthful. They had to, like, could you have not called it DC Universe versus Monsterverse or something?
Yeah, that would have made more sense. It's a very, like, Japanese sounding title. Like, if you ever see the Japanese translations of some of the Godzilla movies, Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, all out monster attack. It doesn't it's a great movie, but it doesn't roll off the tongue too well, So I do think I don't know what they were thinking, but that's what it reminded me of.
Yeah. So yeah, well, other than that, hope you all enjoyed this. I'm Mr. Multiverse. He's Matt Dennion, and we'll see you next time in the Multiverse.